Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the LitRPG Audiobook Podcast. I am Ray, your humble reviewer. I will be reviewing some recent and classic LitRPG audiobooks for you today. Today, I have a litany of books to get through and maybe a little special treat for you who are either fans of Neil Gaiman or Jim Butcher. Just a few words on that. And if you ever have a question about how the scoring goes, it goes a little something like this. Final score is based on a scale of 1 through 10, okay? With 1 being horrible, and 5 being average, and 10 being a perfection. So as we go through this, as we get your scores, and I don't think I've ever told you this, so it's pretty helpful for me to do this for you now. That's the rating system. That's the scale. So, it's really hard for me to give you a 1. I at least give you a 3 if you've got characters, you got a story, and you got a plot. I don't think I've ever given anybody a 2 so far. I've come close. But anyway, enjoy the show. We're about to start right now. So I was starting the show today with The Mechanical Crafter, which is book 1 of LitRPG series, The Mechanical Crafter series, written by R.A. Mija. You may know him as Ramon Mija. Narrated by Jill Smith with a book length of 9 hours and 56 minutes.
There was a cacophony of voices, and while none were quite in focus yet, I recognized the blurry shapes of people moving all around me, along with tables, chairs, walls, and a window in the background. I wished that I could see better, and like magic, words appeared in front of me. Readjusting visual centers. There was a small whirring noise inside my head, and the room came into focus. The people talking were wearing white lab coats and excitedly gesturing toward me. I was confused as I realized just how short the people were. They only came up to my waist and had heads that were just a bit too large for their bodies, with larger than healthy ears and bulbous noses. The word gnomes floated to mind, and I realized that was exactly what they were. Their speech seemed like some foreign language at first, but their words slowly started to make sense, and I realized that I somehow recognized it. A gnome with bright red hair and a handlebar mustache gestured toward me.
See, I told you that it would work. Instead of creating a new artificial soul, the ancients must have bound an old one to their machines to make the metalmen.
So you may have noticed I have never reviewed any books by R.A. Mija or Ramon on the show before. And if so, you probably thought that was because I kind of feared the wrath of Ramon if I gave an unfavorable review. Which is, really, it's not true. It's not true at all. I mean, it's true, I haven't reviewed any of his books, but it's not due to fear. Ramon, up to this point, has always written first-person present tense, to my understanding. And while I am not a really huge fan of first-person POV, I've read enough books from that perspective. It's not a big deal to me. Heck, I specifically wrote the short story Splat in the Essence anthology just to prove to myself that I could do it in first person. But it's just the present tense that I can't do. I cannot do. I walked to the cupboard and pulled open the door and reached inside and grabbed a can of SpaghettiOs and opened a can up and I plopped them into that to me is it's not something that my head can wrap around. It just pulls me out of the story every time, and I can't have my head not being able to get into a story because of the writing style. It's very alien to my brain. So up till now, I usually pass on those kind of books. I mean, I've done it once or twice, but it's really hard for me to do that. And I want to be respectful, and so I've kind of left things be with Ramon. But Ramon, was challenged to write in past tense, and thus The Mechanical Crafter was born. Now, full disclosure, this is a sister podcast to the LitRPG Podcast, and I'm not bound, under no circumstances, under any restrictions on what I say or do. SBT, Sound Booth Theater, our sponsor, has long said, if they do a book I don't like, call them out on it. And Ramon has never pressured me on any book at all to make a comment on anything or say anything or not do a book. Whether, and I don't even know because I've never talked to him about books he hates or he's banned. I don't know anything about those sorts of things because we don't discuss that sort of stuff. But he's never told me, I cannot do a book, I cannot discuss a book, I cannot do any kind of a topic. And so he's never pressured me to review any of his books. And I have had several of my anthologies reviewed by him because I'm not going to do the audio portions because that's where they come through. So he's reviewed a couple of those that I've been in just because I want to be fair about it. So granted, there are some series that I stay away from because they have too much heat. I won't name anybody, but there's an ancient movie with a similar last name. I just won't review books by that person, just because no matter what side of the fence I land on, whether it's yay or nay, there's going to be flash fires and floods and locusts and plagues and horrible things from the community, and so I just prefer to remain neutral on such a topic. So in all honesty, this is a complete and unbiased, honest review, okay? So first of all, that being said, I absolutely love this freaking book. I found it to be too short. If you want to know anything, if you want to know there's a negative to it, it just did not last long enough. I wanted more as soon as the book ended. It did not feel like a 10-hour novel that I had listened to. Hell, I was halfway through it and thought I was only a quarter of the way in. That's how fast it goes and how well it flows. I love the character, Repair, and Grebo, and thought they balanced each other really well. Now, the only thing that really threw me about the MC picking the Metal Man as his new race was that he did so knowing a couple of things. That he would not have options for the fun side of procreation or eating and drinking. Now, I've been married over 20 years, so the fun side of procreation part has kind of vanished for me about 15 years ago. I think it depends on, like, if it's the 15th moon in the year and there's a fire set by raccoons, we can maybe think about stuff like that. So it's been a while for me, so that is not a big deal. But I do enjoy life, and I enjoy, like, the sensation and taste of foods and drinks. For me, it's all about living, and I live in any way that I can. I love to live, I love to breathe, and it is a joy for me to have life. So to exclude three things, sex, food, and drink, I mean, the only thing you have left is rock and roll, and I don't even think they have that there. I don't know if I'd have chosen that character, no matter how cool they were or what the other bonuses were. There's a lot of downside to that. So I don't know if the character just said, I really don't ever need to have sex again, or it wasn't a big deal for him. I don't know, but it was kind of weird, because I do get to relish the moment whenever I eat something like, extra crispy KFC. I cherish those seconds that I can, and I drag it out. It takes me forever to eat. Or some, like, L&B donuts from East Liverpool. Now, this is I don't get anything from this company. They've been there since I was a wee lad. They are the greatest donuts in the world. Okay? I mean, L&B, order from them. They'll ship them to you. They are the best donuts ever created anywhere. I will pit them against any big name, little name donuts ever, anywhere. They are awesome. So if you see the pic here, that's L&B Donuts. That's in my hometown. One of the few things East Liverpool, Ohio, ever did right and well. It was those, okay? So the thought of no sex and no donuts, it makes me want to cry a little bit. But Repair seems to be okay with it. And if he's okay with it, well, gosh darn golly, as a reader and a listener, I should be okay with it too. Here's where I digress a little bit. I've been digressing, so I'm going to pull back. The story revolves around the middleman, Repair, as I've mentioned, who can kind of craft items and repair himself. Wonder where his name comes from items that he breaks down after he scans. Okay, so he can scan, metal, and they can break down it, and he is, I've got like 5 pounds of iron out of that thing, or so on and so forth. I've got, 25 pounds of wood, or I've got this or that. The metal man got wood. I got you, Ramon. Okay. Anyway, that's what he does. Is he does that, he breaks stuff down, and then he creates things, and his skills lets him decide like how big an item he can make at a time. So at first he just makes little dinky rinky-tink stuff, okay? And he's not like he's out making swords or forging Excalibur. I mean, he's just really just making regular little everyday things that can help him out as best he can. And he has a pretty good scam going with the Goblin Grebo on how to make money, because they need money. He's got an issue with gnomes, and I have to say Ramon is probably the first person I know who has created what's sort of a I'd say he's probably like a lawful evil gnome, and he does it well. I mean, like, you're like, yeah, I can see that guy being a rotten little gnome and getting away with stuff and doing things. So, yeah. Okay, he does a really good job. And dear God, I loved the gnome names. I have to say that too. There's a lot of names, they come across as silly, but here it doesn't feel like that. I mean, you can get where he's being humorous with them, but they're good names for the gnomes. The story is highly polished, I will say that, and it has got really strong character development. And for me, that's key to a lot of stuff. I mean, you can progress the story, but if you don't have like really great characters, the progression of the story doesn't really do much. And for me, that's like if you read the old Torg novels, the other role-playing game Torg, they had a set of novels out, and the characters were really I almost swore, really crappy, but the story was really great. There was this great thing against the Gaunt Man and the Infinity. That's a good example of how you have a great story and crappy characters. Here you've got really good characters along the story, and there's actually the crunch elements that I know Ramon is so keen on. So if you are big on the crunch, it's here. And by the way, Repair, for me, he kind of comes off as a Cyberman from Doctor Who, and in the beginning, since his body is made out of all this wood, I kind of envision the wooden Cyberman from the Christmas special starring Matt Smith. If you've ever seen that, that's how I've seen Repair. Even though in the cover it's completely different, he's more sleek in design. I see the Cyberman. In all honesty, I did not cotton on to Jill Smith at first. It took me about 2 chapters to really see her strut her stuff, and the longer that I listened, the more impressed I became. I mean, she really does an amazing job, and for her to make me go from meh to amazing is incredible, because by the end of the book, I was really surprised at how great she is. I haven't really listened to her a lot, or if I've never heard her before. If I did, I don't remember. But she just blindsided me by how good she is. She's really, really excellent as a narrator. And like I say, it took me a few hours there to get into. It was like by chapter 2, I was like, wow, she's really good. She's got a lot of talent, a lot of skill. So she's going to be on my list of people to listen for in the future. So in all honesty and seriousness, this is a tight little package of goodness, okay? My score is going to be completely uninfluenced by anybody's opinion but my own, and I'm going to say it's an 8.5. I can only hope that Ramon continues to write in past tense so that I can enjoy more of his stuff in the future. This is like a huge step for me because, like I said, I've wanted to listen to his stuff. I've wanted to, read his stuff, but I can't do that present tense. I just can't do present tense. And this is a game changer. I mean, really, it really is. So I really hope that Ramon continues to write past tense in the future. Wait, does that make sense? Okay, so the next book I'm doing is Sense, A Touch of Power, Book 3, by Jay Boyce, narrated by Samara Naimi. I'm sorry if I slaughtered that. I can't remember how it's said, so forgive me, Samara. With a book length of 14 hours and 45 minutes.
Ibrin 4-392. Report on the traveler Jade Winward. Jade arrived on Fomhar 17 in one of the rooms at the Green Dragon. Reports state that she visited the healer Mike before making a name for herself as a zombie healer in the streets, where her existence came to our attention. She also visited and was rejected from the library, making contact with the Glass Phoenix afterward to light sculptures. An interview was arranged for the 18th, where she demonstrated multiple magics and was given a library pass and study room to familiarize herself with the customs of our world. She was particularly motivated by books. Jade met Prince William on the morning of the 19th, who escorted her to meet the royal family. She then went to the library to receive her class schedule and was taken shopping by the princesses, who seemed rather attached to her.
At long last, we get a book from Jay Boyce, a new book, and it continues to carry on the tradition of excellence from the previously established tales. Now, what I'm glad to kind of say is that we do not go into half of the book waiting for this expedition against the Mesmer lair to take place. Thankfully, it occurs early in the book. I was really expecting it to happen midway or 3/4 of the way in, because that's usually how the stories have tended to flow as we go through this. That means we get to long last see Jade in full out action, and it is a gratifying chapter or 7 when she confronts the Mesmer. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Mesmer are a race of evil sapients who sneak into town where she lives about once a month and steal random town folks to drain their magic, or their mana, however you want to word it, but it's their magic, and they feed off of that. And while they're not described as such, I really can't help but envision the Pokemon Drowsy for some reason. Not Mesmer. There's a Pokemon named Mesmer. But I envision Drowsy when I hear about the Mesmer. So whenever these creatures are mentioned, that's what I see. Now I'm betting you will too. The confrontation kind of goes the way I expected it, with some things being resolved, other things not so much, to a point where you can kind of fairly guess early on what's going to happen at either the end of the book or the start of the next one. Now, I'm not saying it's bad, but it's a pretty good telegraph of where the plot's heading, because they go there to take care of business. They do a couple things they need to have happen. Other things occur, and then there's things that cause like a chain of events to happen away from there. So, and I don't want to give spoilers, but it was kind of, I expected that to happen just because I was just like, I can see this is what's going to happen here. Now after that, the story kind of settles back into the routine of Jade siphoning random people and combining her skills. And there's a plot line of various other royals visiting the city in order to reestablish trade agreements and size each other's up, as royals do. So right after the fight, just expect more of what's come before. So if you were wanting like a big sprawling, wicked battle that goes throughout most of the book or has intermittent stuff, no, I mean there's the battle scene at the beginning, or I don't want to say scene. It's a stage that things happen, but there's the fight, and then after that, it's just kind of back to where we were before. So if you like those first two books, this is exactly like those first two books on how Jade progresses and grows as a siphon, okay? So, like I say, she just kind of figures out the stuff like a rock star. The only issue I really have is that Jade is just really OP. And that's demonstrated during the arena battles with the other royals. Very OP. And the story just kind of scoots along by building her up. That's like, okay, I've gathered this power, gathered that power, and that's just about like what the whole rest of the book is about, like her getting stronger, with other little things being thrown in there. So there's not a lot of progression to the tale until the very end, of course, which is what you kind of know what's going to happen if you paid attention. So again, it's a very slice of life. And while it doesn't quite feel like 14 hours, it doesn't feel like less. I mean, it feels like a 14-hour book. It's kind of status quo. As I said, if you like book 1, book 2, you'll love this book as well. I would just like to see some more progression story-wise, character-wise. Everything is moving along pretty nicely, but I would still like to see progression in the story itself, because right now we've really just gotten Jade woke up, Jade got her powers, she got healed, she got into the royal family, and it's just been that same way for the last two books. So just letting you know. Samara continues to do a great job narrating, and I have to hand it to her because Boyce doesn't believe in focusing on just a few characters. Not at all. This is a cast of hundreds. And she juggles them all very well. Admittedly, I cannot readily identify who is speaking from just the voice sometimes, but that is only because there are so many secondary characters to keep track of, not because of the vocal talent on her end. I mean, she does a really great job. I mean, I don't even know how you would keep track of who they are and how they sound in your head. I'd have to stop every 5 minutes to go back to listen to recordings in the past, just to kind of figure out how they sounded, because I couldn't do it. But again, that's not because of her, it's just because it is a cast of thousands, is the way it kind of comes across sometimes. And it's good, because that's real. Like, if you lived in the area that she lived in, and lived in the city that she did, and things that were happening, you would meet all these people, and she juggles knowing who these people are. So, like I said, Samara she nails it. She does a great job. I really do appreciate her work. Final score is 8 stars. The taste of battle was nice, but it really didn't satiate my need. I wanted more, and after it was over, we kind of fell back into the same old routine. Good writing, interesting characters, excellent game concepts, but it needs a real shot in the arm to keep it at the same level of excellence that has come before. Okay, the next book up is Varnoth, The Black Blade Book 2 by Lavelle Jackson, narrated by Jack Veraces, which has a book length of 7 hours and 17 minutes.
"Come out!" Varnoth yelled and begged with all the energy he could muster. "I need your help." The tiny attempt at communication with the unseen creature exhausted him. Then, a head popped out from behind an oak tree. The head of the beast appeared to be green, but he couldn't be sure. "I see you. Please, come out. As you can see, I cannot harm you. I'm bound to this wretched cross," Varnoth pleaded. The hesitant creature stepped out from behind the tree and walked to the edge of the road. The beast was green, and very small. He could not have been more than 3 feet tall. After Varnoth got a good look at the green humanoid, more text appeared. "Goblin Scout, Level 1. After much hesitation, the goblin crossed the dusty road and stood at the base of the cross, looking up at the Catman.
So the Black Blade is black, the Black Blade is back, and the Panther Man, known as Varnoth, continues his tale. Jackson tells his tale of the crucified kitten pretty much as gruesomely as he can. I think he goes out of his way sometimes to make things more gory than necessary, but if you like gore, you're fine. This is going to be a book for you. So in this book, the Catman gains a couple of allies, one of whom absolutely overshadows him at every single turn. And that, of course, would be the character, the Bard, known as John, the son of Ray. John is a badass that literally steals every scene he is in. And while I'm sort of mostly kidding, he's a pretty cool character. And he's probably the funniest parts in the book. Like, when there's humor, it usually works really well with John, okay? The other is an additional character that is a pyromancer. And for me, it was the ad of these other characters that really kind of pumped up the story. Varnoth, as a standalone, if you read a lot of books, you can't just really you can, but it's hard to make one person be the sole focus of a book. They have to have other people they bounce ideas off of to grow emotionally. They've got to have things happen. So getting this cast of characters growing was a big boon for Lavelle. Now Jackson is unabashed in his use of overpowered MCs. I think sometimes he just likes to see characters rip swaths of damage across the landscape, like the Hulk used to do in the 70s and 80s over at Marvel. And I do think he does need to tone his MC down a little bit to make there be a bit more of a struggle, because there are points where you just go, there's never any question as to whether Varnoth will survive. It's more of how bad is he going to kill the other guys. And it was the same thing with his orc in Tuscan Blade. So, he's not afraid to admit he doesn't like weak characters. I just think that a character does not need to be weak. They just need to be shown as being vulnerable at some points. Like Superman is overwhelmingly powerful, but you give him a little bit of kryptonite and he's done for. And that isn't even the weakness that he has. I mean, his real weakness is his caring for humanity. And so having the other characters come in, I think that might help in book 3. And I think that if he does do book 3, which I think right now he's thinking of combining, per some genius's advice, Tuscan Blade and Varnoth in book 3. So if he does do that, I mean, I think it'll work well, because you're going to have 2 really overwhelmingly powerful characters going head to head, toe to toe, and I think that it could really be interesting, because somebody has to lose, somebody has to give. Freddy versus Jason, it was a toss-up, but that's a wussy way to do things. Okay, you got to have a winner somewhere. So, I never really wonder if Varnoth is ever going to get hurt in these books so far, or have some sort of unforeseen repercussion from his actions. I really haven't even seen that happen. So he does what he does, and there's no like, oh, you're going to jail because you murdered 15 people, or, you did this. It's kind of like he does what he does and he gets away with it and he's happy. So I'd like a touch more direction and some struggle to be shown up on the Catman side if we get a book 3. I can say that from book 1, the dialogue is greatly improved, but it still does need a little bit more fleshing out. Again, it kind of reads like a comic book, with the villainous dialogue being espoused by vile people and pretty much pious, holy things from the heroes. Now, I'm not saying Varnoth is a hero where he's very, he's got piety on his side. But then I know that Jackson sort of talks that way actually in real life, because if he does talk to me in some capacity, at some point, invariably he will go, bah! like, Dr. Doom. That's all I can ever. Every time he says that, I think of Dr. Doom. Bah! Reed Richards, I'll get you. So I kind of get that that's how he talks. So Jackson also, he opts for the goriest deaths that he can, and he makes me think his writing style was more splatterpunk than anything else. Now, I'm a horror and a gorehound fanatic, but he writes scenes that makes Kill Bill's battle at the House of Blue Leaves seem like a Saturday morning kids show. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I'm just letting you know, be aware, be advised. There will be many maimings and mutilations and beheadings and fingernails getting cut as we go through this, okay? I really also liked the hammer tar. It's a pretty cool weapon. It's an original weapon, and it has some style. So, kudos to him for coming up with the hammer tar concept. My biggest issue with the stories is that the story tends to roam around, just going from quest to quest or place to place. It's really just a slice of life that needs a bit more direction. Secondly, it is the black hat versus white hat characters that are either 100% good or 100% evil. We do need some middle ground characters to make the story have more depth. I need a couple shades of gray. And that's one of those things that I just think that it comes with time as you write, as he grows as a writer. You'll get a little bit more ambiguity between some of the characters. Like in Tuscan Blade, there was the villain who really doesn't make an appearance as a villain until later on, and the motivations were almost right there, and I know what the motivations were, but it didn't really blossom. There should have been hints and traces of that earlier on, so I can see where he's progressing as a writer. The book does pick up where book 1 left off, so it's if you were wondering what happens, don't worry about it. You'll be filled in. And it does have humorous moments. And Jackson, like I said, his writing does improve. So if you're a fan of book 1, I have no doubt that you will enjoy book 2, as it is just more of what came before. With the exception of there's no more herbs style jokes. And that's all I ask. I mean, that's it. I've been racking my brain. I mean, really, I have. The things I go through trying to conceptualize what is there. Like, I will have something hit me and I'll say, okay, what is it that's off about this, or what's strange about this, or what does this remind me of? It does this to me all the time. That's my brain 100% of the time. I will have a million things to do, and I will have some stupid thing swirling in my head. And I kept thinking, who does Jack Verace's voice remind me of? And I've been doing this for a long time. And it was only after I went home to my parents' house for my son's graduation party. There's Budja. So that's my son Budja right there. He just graduated. Way to go, Budja. That's Logan. And after spending hours at the house with my mother, she was watching a Deep Space Nine marathon on BBC, that I realized that he sounds an awful lot like Dr. Julian Bashir. Yes, the Doctor from Deep Space Nine and Jack Verace's voices and cadence and patterns of speaking are almost identical. I mean, they are. It's scary. I could see if they did a Deep Space Nine cartoon, Verace's could literally do the voice for Dr. Julian Bashir. And I wouldn't even know it wasn't him, okay? So when I listen to him, I kind of now see Dr. Bashir reading me the book. On that note, if you are a fan of Verace's, you will be satisfied with his performance. Again, I just wish he put a little bit more effort into making Varnoth sound non-human. He's a cat man. He should be non-human in his sound. A little bit of a growl to his voice, or, hissing, or just something. And I know he can do it, and do it well, from what I've heard, because he did Vanquir the Dragon. And if you listen to that, Vanquir, or Vanquir, I don't know how to say it, Vanquir. It's really got like a lot of special effects to it. It's there. You're listening to a dragon. So I just wish he'd done a little bit more with this for the Catman. My final score, I'm going to go 7.8 stars. This is a clear improvement. It does not deviate in tone or taste from book 1. I think Jackson does improve more in T&B than he does here, but again, this is in between the first book of Varnoth and the Tuscan Blade series, and so you can see the transitional stages he kind of goes through. You can see him getting better as he goes, but it's a 7.8 stars. Okay, next up, and probably the final book for the week here, before I go into my little special nugget for you, is Castle of the Noobs, Noobtown Book 3, by Ryan Rimmel, narrated by Jonathan McLean, with a book length of 16 hours and 33 minutes.
Bye, Daddy. Bye, I love you, Eve Sophia called. The little girl was frantically waving at her father as the caravan left Windfall's gates. Joe Clarence was far more solemn as he stood between her and their mother, Ava Sophia. Well, it looks like I'm the man of the house now, the boy, only a couple of years older than his sister, informed everyone. Eve Sophia spun around to face him, hands on her hips. It was an action I had seen her mother do on more than one occasion. Who says we need a man of the house? What do you think that you can do better than Mom? She promptly stuck her tongue out at him. I scanned the crowd that had come to wave the caravan off. Nearly the whole town had turned out for this historic event. The only people seemingly missing were some of the Thu-Clicky refugees.
So, what can I say about Ryan Rimmel's Noobtown that I haven't said before? The series is really excellent. It's funny, it's witty, it's sarcastic, it's snarky, and it has a very punchy prose style that I really appreciate. The characters are really fun and enjoyable, and I think that the Badger lore is probably my all-time favorite animal sidekick. He's psycho, and he's fantastic as the psychotic animal, and it's perfect for the sort of semi-childish humor that because it does talk about like pooping and puking and things like that. It's not puerile humor per se, but it comes pretty close sometimes. The story here picks up right after book 2 leaves off. The hero, the mayor, has to figure out a way to kind of increase his trade routes while simultaneously figure out a way to improve the town. And the only way he can really do that is if he gets a castle that will let him do more land grants and grow more vegetables and foods from the farms, and it will extend his influence and power while he's still taking in refugees. And he takes in refugees every day. I mean, more and more refugees every single day. So, the mayor has a bunch of stuff on his plate. And he's got a little bitty... He's got a toothpick to eat a steak with. Okay, there's that much on his plate. So, Rimmel does a really good job portraying that, too. Like I say, Rimmel is hilarious, and the book captivates and does not feel like a long book. It comes across very quickly and is mostly enjoyed in just large swaths of reading. I think I read this whole thing in 2 sittings, and that was only because I did have a break in between, but only because I had a very busy day and I had to stop for a few minutes to do something, and I had to come back and jump back into it. But I was lucky enough to get through the whole thing in practically one sitting all at once. Otherwise I would have. And I work 14, 15, 16, 20-hour days sometimes. And the last couple of weeks have been just off the charts. Like I say, right now I'm recording. We had calling hours 2 to 4, and between 4 and 6 I have free time, so I'm recording right now. So it's now 5 p.m. my time, getting this done. So I'm really trying really hard to get this squeezed in with everything. Okay, and that was that's how my day goes. So I don't have a lot of time, so I'm able to do like a huge book in one singular day, and I think you'll do it whether you want to or not. I mean, once you get into it, I really think the humor and the style and the wit and the sarcasm, it draws you in and it keeps you there. I don't think you'll want to leave, personally. I think you'll want to continue reading the story as it goes along, no matter what happens or what comes up. And Rimmel really sets up each book well. I think he's got it already set for the next novel. The only issue I have is really how the MC, the mayor, doesn't see what's happening to him a lot of times. I mean, he's pretty much got blinders on. Particularly, I mean, if you've been reading the series so far with one singular character, I think he's just meant to be clueless. And it comes across pretty well here that he's clueless. But it's still funny and entertaining when he kind of wises up towards what's happening to him. It was a joy to listen to. I mean, I really just like Rimmel's writing style. It's like him and Eric Ugland. Those guys make me laugh more than Robin Williams ever did. I never found Robin Williams funny. Ugland and Rimmel, two of the best comedy writers that I can think of. So yeah, I give credit where credit's due. Jonathan McLean, he does another outstanding job on the book. I love his narration, and I think he has been a wonderful storyteller, and he has had one of these things where he is able to captivate you and keep you on a hook, and then he will drop you off a cliff without realizing what's going on that fast. I mean, he can do all that with his voice. He can tell that kind of a story, and you don't want to leave. You want to continue listening to everything. I mean, he kills it. McLean just does, like I said, it's another outstanding job. His narration is near perfect. He's a wonderful storyteller, and he has a great ear for comedy. I don't know if you don't get to hear that very often. There's very few people, I think, that can really, really nail comedy, and I think he does. I think he really knows how to do the pauses and have the beats, and to push things a little bit, and then he can even take something that wasn't probably intended to be funny and make it feel funny. So I really like how he does that. He's a great narrator. Love him, and the combination between McLean and Rimmel, it makes for a killer tale. Overall, I love the story, I love the tale, I love the characters. I really cannot wait for more. I mean, I could go on and on and on about this. There's no point. I'm going to say 8.3 stars. I could go higher, but I cannot go lower. Okay, gang, I'm going to keep this short and sweet, and this is just an additional little treat for you. And we don't need to hear audio or anything like that, and I'm not going to give you scores, but two really big books came out in the last month, and very recently, and I'm not talking within the LitRPG community, I'm talking more of in like fantasy and urban fantasy specifically, and those would be Peace Talks by Jim Butcher and the Neil Gaiman Sandman novel. And both are really good in some aspects, and others, there's some drawbacks. Now, like I said, I'm not going to score this, so I'm just going to give you my initial assessments. Jim Butcher, let's start with him. Okay, Jim Butcher's, if I could say his name, it's not Booker, it's Butcher's Peace Talks is not a bad novel, especially not after a 5-year-long wait. And I think the only thing that we can really be seen being wrong with this is that he was kind of forced to split the book in two. I would like to believe that he wrote a really huge novel to make up to his fans for taking so long and getting back to the Dresden verse. But the fact is, there are financial considerations, and so his publisher said, look, let's split the book. We can release the other book in the same year, just months apart, and so it won't be that bad. So let's do this. And of course, Jim's going to say, okay, whatever you guys think. And I think that's where a lot of the backlash has been for Jim, has been the splitting of the book. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't have an issue with the splitting of the book so much as where the split occurred. I actually think the book is too long. There is a scene towards the end of the novel, and probably a chapter or two right before the very end, that ends with, and then the wizards went to war. Now, I'm not spoiling anything, because you don't know if it's 50 wizards, 2 wizards, a group of wizards, this side, that side, but it says, then the wizards went to war. Okay? That was where the book should have stopped. Excellent cliffhanger. Unbelievable nail-biting scenario. You don't know what's going to happen next. You cannot wait to get your hands on the next book. You know it's coming in a few months, and it will be there, and you are just dying to get that. And they don't do that. They actually give you like a chapter of the fight, and then a chapter after that. And it kind of deflated everything, because you needed like that cliffhanger to really give you some meaning. And I think they wanted it to feel like it was the end of a regular novel, and it was kind of a closer, and they didn't want it to feel like it was a cliffhanger, because Dresden doesn't end like on that kind of a note. I mean, there's a continuation into the story at some point, so that things are done here, but we're moving on in this capacity later on. And I think that was the biggest problem I had with the story, and I think that's what a lot of people, whether they realize it or not, had issues with. Otherwise, I think there was some really great moments, and especially you get to see a lot of the characters. A lot of the cast characters are back. Like all the knights are back. Knights of the Sword. Murphy's there. Stuff happens with Murphy. Molly's there. Mab is there. Big things happen. Even Faravax shows up, so stuff is going down. Okay, so it's a really, really excellent story, and I think that was the only issue anybody had was they cut it off, and I think if they'd ended it on a strong note, it would have been more dramatic and less, more attention would have been put on it, because it ended up being a scene that sort of, as it ended, it was more like a fish out of water flopping around when it could have been a fish biting you in the leg. Okay, and that's just how I look at it. Like the ending, the last chapter was just kind of like okay, we're getting there. Or it should have been like a shark bite. You should have been ripped to shreds going, oh my god, I'm bleeding to death. What's going to happen next? And that was it. So, it's really good. If you're a fan of Dresden, I recommend it. And don't be put off by what I just said. I mean, it's worth the time and read for it. It's worth the money. So just go out and get it. You're going to get it if you're a Dresden fan, one way or the other. The other book is a new book by Neil Gaiman, and it's based on Morpheus the Sandman. And if I wasn't wearing my work clothes, I'm right in between services. We had calling hours 4 to 6. And right now I'm trying to get this done so that Ramon can have this out for you tomorrow. Hoping that's going to be the case. So I can't show you my tattoo, but I actually have a great big Sandman tattoo right there. It's Morpheus. It's done by Jill Thompson, one of my favorite artists for comics. I have a Black Orchid drawing that she did for me at a Comic-Con years ago, and I've always wanted to go back and get her to do Morpheus in Death for me. And so I'm a huge fan. Believe me, I have more memorabilia. I have more comics. I've got all the comics. I've got probably double trade paperbacks for every story, just because I've got so many comics, if I can't find it, I just order another trade paperback so I can read that story again. That's how crazy I am, okay? I know everything about all the characters. You could not take me to Jeopardy and win against me on the characters. Neil Gaiman would probably lose against me when it comes to the Sandman, okay? So this was like a big anticipatory thing for me, and I hated to put off like my LitRPG, but this was a must-have for me, and I'm really kind of sorry I did it. The Sandman Chronicles was an excellent comic book, and translating that over, because that's exactly what it is. It's like the first packet of comics, like the first, I think, 10 comics or 12 comics, whatever number it is. I can't remember. I just know that they took a bunch of the beginning comics, the first arc of comics probably, and put it all together and did like a serialized OTR, old-time radio play, with music and sound effects and stuff like that. Neil Gaiman actually narrates, and then there's a huge cast. I mean, I don't even want to go into how many people there are. It's a huge cast of characters. And for the most part, like 99% of them do great. I only had one issue with one of the voices, and that was with Death. And the voice talent, and I don't even know who it was, because I didn't go back to look to see who did what, other than James McAvoy doing Dream. The voice talent for Death herself was not what I kind of envisioned. I mean, it sounded like Jennifer Tilly, and God help me, I love Jennifer Tilly. I mean, first off, she's hot. She's sister to Meg Tilly, and she's hot, and she's got an amazing voice. Like, I'm actually drawn to her voice as much as I am to her, physically, facially, and yet her voice is not meant to be the voice of Death. And I'm not saying Jennifer Tilly did the voice, and God help me if she did, I'm going to weep, because I'm really a huge Jennifer Tilly fan, but it just does not come across well. And that one really threw me, because every time I heard it, it was like, if you've ever seen The Man with Two Brains, where Steve Martin he's got to kill somebody, some girl, so he can put his girlfriend's brain in her body to save her before her brain dies. And he gets this hooker, and he's in the elevator, and he's getting ready to inject her with like window cleaner, which will kill her brain. And she starts talking. When she talks like this, and she starts singing, do Duke of oil. Okay, and he can't take it. He can't. Even that voice, I was like, man, she's hot and she's got a cool voice. I like that. I like those weird, bizarre voices. They really appeal to me, and it just threw me off when this Voice for Death came out. Now, my other complaint is Gaiman narrates, but it's very a bare bones kind of thing. Comics are a visual medium, and when you don't have, and here's what I think happened. I believe wholeheartedly they just took the scripts. Like Gaiman said, look, I'm looking to cash in on some of my American Gods, momentum, and what can I do? I could do Sandman. Can't get this thing made into a TV deal, but I could probably do an audiobook. Why don't I take the scripts from the first arc of Sandman and just have a cast of characters narrate it? They'll do the voices. I'll tell the little bits in between, because I've done that before. I'm a great speaker. I've got poise. I've got class, and I'll put that out there. Well, he does, and the whole time I listened to this thing, I kept thinking, I'm missing so much, because I know I literally know each scene. He had different artists for different arcs and different stories and different books. Like book 1's artist was different from book 8. Book 8 was Jill Thompson, The Sound of Her Wings. You go through it and it's very different. And as I'm listening, and it was right there, that was like where the big derail came for me, was during The Sound of Her Wings. Because there is a scene in The Sound of Her Wings where Death takes a baby, okay? And the baby's like, that's it, that's all I get? And she's like, yep. And then they kind of go on their way. And there's no impact. And you know why? Because all the impact is left on the drawing board. It's literally on the drawing where all the emotional stuff comes out, where you can see like the baby going, what the hell? It's like, hey, it's got its arm on her, and it's like, that's it, that's all I get. And and I just keep waiting like for Death to say, you get what everybody else gets. It's one lifetime. That's what you get. Everybody gets one lifetime. Whether it's a minute or 100 years, you get a lifetime. And no, I'm saying that's in that scene, but I'm just saying that's where I'm going with this as I'm listening. And I kept thinking, I can't see the stuff, and he's not describing like the baby, she snuggles the baby closer to her chest, and she holds it lovingly, and the mother comes into the room and falls on her knees, and you don't get that, and you need it. It really is. It's kind of like a half a story. It's kind of like, okay, you pick like any kind of modern book, let's say Delvers, okay? Delvers, Henry comes into the room, Henry says some lines, and then there's a noise, and then you know that he did something with his powers. It doesn't tell you anything that happened other than you heard the noise, and that's what this is like. And that's probably a bad analogy. I'm really bad at that sort of stuff, but you kind of get what I'm saying, right? I mean, like, there needs to be more to this than what there is, and I just really believe that Gaiman just was like, I'm going to cash grab. This is what it came across to me, is it's a cash grab, and ran with it. That's what he did. That's how it went. That's what it was. It's a cash grab. That's where it comes across to me. I just think that he could have done a lot more. He could have worked at it a lot harder, and it would have been a lot better. Sorry, but facts is facts, and that's all I can tell you. But anyway, it's not a bad book. I would say, whereas Dresden is worth the time, I would say if you can borrow somebody else's version of the Sandman, that's probably the way I would go. I wouldn't buy it. It's not worth the money. It's not worth the time. Unless you're like in a hospital and you got nothing but hours to kill. And even then, there's probably 85 other books I'd recommend, like Wandering Inn 1 or 2, which is 100 hours of story right there for the same price, basically. Even if it's just 40 hours, you get the same price, and you get a lot more story, a lot more detail, and a lot better stuff going on. And so, like I say, it's not a horrible story, but Dresden is far better, and it gets beaten up way worse than Sandman does. Okay, so thank you so very much, everyone, for watching. I do appreciate you taking the time to watch or listen to the show. If you want to support us, you can like the LitRPG Podcast Facebook page or the YouTube page, or just share and like the video. I sincerely, very deeply from the bottom of my heart believe and hope that you might have enjoyed this show today. I hope you have enjoyed it. Please leave comments or suggestions in the comments section, which is somewhere down below here. And feel free to tell me whatever you like. You can tell me how much I suck. I enjoy the feedback. I really do. Next week, I will have another Andrea Parsnow special called Parsnow, featuring Wandering Into, Shatter Sword, some Hondo Jinx stuff, and some other things just for fun. Not another interview, though. I just don't really have time for that. I really wish I did. I don't. I don't have time for anything anymore. Remember, you can always follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. So that's all I need to say for today. What I would like to say is always, please leave a review, and if you could, keep listening.